All right, looks like we're back at it. Welcome everybody to episode 4, Conversations from the Underground. As you guys are maybe potentially familiar with the format, we touch base for the first 5 minutes, kind of see, how we're feeling, where we're coming from, and then after that 5 minutes, we figure out where we're actually going. So, without further ado, what's up, man? What you getting into this week, or what's going on?
Man, been busy, real busy. Can't seem to slow down. Keep adding more things, and I forget oftentimes that I got something going on. I'm like one of the world's worst when it comes to scheduling, because I just throw stuff in there and I don't keep a book, and then I end up with several things on my list that I didn't anticipate. But doing a lot of gardening this week. Messing around with some pretty cool fish peppers. Just got back from a conference yesterday. Been talking about all kinds of different things in my class. It's been good, man. We're halfway there through the semester. About halfway done. So got grades in. Got another round coming pretty soon. But what about you?
Yeah, I got midterms coming around, or whatever they're called, tri-terms or whatever I got going on. But probably like with the next couple weeks or so. Man, it's just a lot of stuff's going on this week. With of course, we're always on the coattails, if you will, of the controversy associated with Kanye.
Yeah.
Controversy then kind of lends itself to Kyrie Irving's situation with the him posting a documentary, a link to a documentary. No context, no nothing, but that turned into what it turned into. And then another death in the hip hop community. Senselessly, we have one of the members of Migos, a fairly influential hip hop group coming out of Atlanta. Takeoff was killed, only 28 years old. So there's a lot of stuff going on this week that I could have touched on in class. But yeah, man, I don't know.
Mention any of that stuff in class?
Always.
Yeah.
It always gets brought up.
How long? Both of those events, you happen to mention in class yet?
Definitely mentioned Kanye. Kanye's always in my earpiece, especially because of how inflammatory his perception or his perspective can be at times. And I'm not saying that that's good or bad, but it's always in the ear of my audience because they hear it. And my audience, when I say that, our students, they know a different Kanye. It's almost like when I have to have a conversation with my students, or I don't have to have these conversations. Let's say if I bring up Mike Tyson, they get this lovable creature who he's funny, he's smoking weed, and they don't know the Iron Mike that I know.
Got a little white beard. He's looking kind of
and he's looking
would have thought 20 years ago. I mean, this one never could have looked wise.
Right, and people listen to Mike nowadays, and they think that he has wisdom to share. And don't get me wrong, he always has.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been through a lot. Trials and tribulations has given him those wrinkles upon his face, yet he still be getting out there rocking fools, yo. What the heck?
They don't know him. They see him as this, but I know him as the most dangerous man on the planet. They called him the baddest man on the planet because you never knew he was a ticking time bomb. And when you want to talk about somebody who would say something with this vitriol, with this like this, dude, he talked about eating your children. Praise be to Allah, man. He said some ill stuff, but that was a different time. And to think if you had an athlete that would say the things that Iron Mike Tyson would say back then, we're in a different world. And our students don't understand, or they don't understand the depth of an individual. They see a person for who they are in this context, and they think that that's who they forever were. that there's not this room for growth. And what I find interesting in our society, by the way, we hit the 5-minute mark.
Mm.
But just
So I
to
think,
piggyback
yeah,
on that.
yeah. Let's get back. Let's. You can pick up right there. Something that you said that binds these characters together is that we got in each of them somebody saying something. And you got somebody saying something, and then you got society responding to somebody saying something. And I think this is something that's different from what our students have experienced versus what we've experienced versus what our parents experienced, and their generation different. This is important to understand history so that you don't get caught up in these webs of thinking that your experience is the experience. You got to get caught up in them webs, man, and you start thinking that your experience is the same experience somebody 2,000 years ago had. And it gets you thinking to act certain ways that may not be in your interest or your societal's interest. So I think this is a really interesting topic to keep going with about these characters, what happened to them, why it's important to pay attention to.
It's a, when I look at them, I don't know if it befuddles me, but I mean, it's just there seems to be this notion that we like to build up and tear down individuals in our society, and it's when they are in the process of being torn down, we look at them, and if they are humble enough to apologize correctly, then that's the individual that we will write a redemption song for. And it reminds me of Muhammad Ali. When Muhammad Ali would say something, and our society would say, "How dare you, you un-American this, you un-American that," and our society was ready to condemn him for his beliefs, for his thoughts, for his values, and he lost his career at the height of his prime. And it was only that after we knocked him down, that then we knocked him down, and then we realized, oh, he's suffering from Parkinson's. Oh, now that he's in this this state where he's conquered, we're willing to look back on him. Now that he's in a state of fragility, we can look back on him and say, oh, okay, no, we love you again, Ali. We look at somebody like Britney Spears. She was at the top of the game, and then she loses it. And then now that she's out of her conservatorship, America's looking at her like, oh, we love you, Britney. Go, Britney. After we've destroyed her. That the machine destroyed her. With Muhammad Ali, it's destroyed him. With Kyrie, he's had his opinion. And now you have some people saying this will be his last year in the NBA.
Yeah, let me jump in here because we got these two cases, one of Kyrie, one of Kanye, and I'd like to make a distinction between them and Ali. Actually, I'd like to make a distinction between Kyrie and Kanye, and then Ali and both of them. The first of which point I'd like to make is that you can always stand up for something that you think is right, that your society is against, but you better do your homework before standing up if you're a figure who people are going to focus and pay attention to every word you say, or there's going to be tremendous repercussions. You can knock them down easily and still be strong if you do your homework, you understand where you're coming from, and you don't make quick assumptions. Now, let's look at someone like Kanye, whose main impulse, it seems to me, behind everything he does I was raised to think differently. I was raised to think for myself. I'm gonna think the way I think, and no one's gonna make me a chain. And so I'm free when I'm thinking for myself. He thinks this, and he doesn't even pay attention to what he's thinking. Oftentimes, isn't the right thing. Just because you think it and it's yourself, don't mean it's the right thing. I can want it to be raining outside all I want, and if I walk out there and it's sunny, and I'm like, I'm thinking for myself. I'm saying it's raining. You're not getting anywhere, man. It's unproductive to have beliefs without significant understanding and reinforcement of those beliefs, especially when they are beliefs that are very tense and are responsible for a tremendous amount of problems. Now let's check Kyrie. Kyrie, I feel like Kyrie is could be a little closer to the Muhammad Ali situation, because what I don't see anybody talking about is the fact that once this all happened, when Kyrie posted that and they came at him, he straight up said, I had to look up the word too, onanism. I can't
Prominent.
be I can't be anti-Semitic because I'm an onomist. If you look it up, it says I have respect and belief for all religions. So he just said to all of y'all that he is not anti-Semitic. You didn't understand what that word meant,
Right.
or you didn't like the way he said it, so you came at him real nasty. And Kyrie got upset and responded in ways that many of us would, I feel. But his background as being someone who kind of believes in a lot of conspiracy theories and thinks about kind of fringe ideas sometimes, he likes to see himself as a free thinker and does some of those things that Kanye, I was describing, does. In this situation, I don't know that that's the case, because I haven't had a conversation with Kyrie. I'd like to know if he even watched the film, or did he just watch a few clips that look cool, like I did. I ain't seen the film yet.
Me either. But if even if he hasn't seen the whole film, then he would be representative of our society at large, because most people haven't watched the film. They're operating off of what they have been told about the film. No,
Right.
most people haven't watched the Kanye West podcast. They're operating off the clips they saw on
Right.
YouTube and this and that. And once it gets verified from a few that this is the narrative of, or this is our take on it, then we just leave it at that. We don't delve deeper into the resources. We're not digging into the crates. We're not looking into the archives for ourselves before we begin making assumptions about this and that. Most of us don't. Kyrie could be definitely one of them. I've watched the interviews with Kyrie. I've watched the entire Drink Champs podcast. I haven't seen other of Kanye's interviews with Lex Friedman, with Piers Morgan. I have not seen those yet. But I'd imagine, as you were ultimately getting at, and I didn't mean to interrupt, but who knows how much of that Kyrie's actually watched himself.
Yeah, right. I don't know about that, because I don't think that Kyrie is anti-Semitic. I think Kyrie is prone to believing things that go against the grain, just because of the type of cat he is, from what I get and what I gather about how he carries himself, which isn't always a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. I mean, it's good to have people who are conscious and aware and care about things the way they do. And he'd be burning sage when he goes into the NBA locker room, be praying. Uh, he sometimes, I think this is a good example, though, of how we can be. It's good to be a free thinker, but with stipulations. You can't just go and free think until there's no truth. You can. Postmodernists do it. They don't even think that there's a world around them. They just believe oftentimes that the world is an illusion, or it's just merely ideas. How do I know I exist? Well, you get into all this different deep philosophical examinations of reality and duality and things like this. But for the most part, if we want to function in a society, we have to have some basic sort of understanding ways to analyze knowledge, right? Like the scientific method helps out. If you see something and you kind of reinforce it and you try it, and when it comes to things like humanities, it's difficult because it may be operating more in the subjective realm than other disciplines do. But we have to use objectivity as a tool to steer our subjective aspects of history in the right direction. If not, then if we deny objectivity entirely, and we start getting into these very fringe ideas, man, where you believe, where you over here thinking like the world is flat, man. Like, come on.
Or you believe in the Nation of Islam, like Muhammad Ali did. Now, but if you look at Muhammad Ali, he's now a beloved figure. How could that be the case? And what my point in bringing up Muhammad or Mike Tyson or Kyrie or Kanye, for that matter, is that these are individuals that they definitely push an envelope. They definitely have a history of saying some very controversial things to society at the moment. They will all be broken, but there's a redemptive song to each of them, but only after they have to be. Unfortunately, our society forces them to be broken. Otherwise, there won't be a redemption song for them. In the case of Muhammad, man, he was one of the most hated American or figures in our society. One of the most hated.
Though, or did he really just kind of change his ideas?
No, he didn't. No, man. I don't know if he really changed his ideas, but I do know that
he wasn't in the nation when he died, for sure.
He was not. But see, society will look at him and they'll say, "Oh, he has Parkinson's."
Yeah. But real talk, I would say, and this may be a bit controversial, but real talk, I think the Nation of Islam is a cult, and people get caught up in cults.
Of course, yeah.
Right, and I think he renounced that. Malcolm saw it too. People started to see it after a while, and now today the nation ain't the same as it was. So I wouldn't call it a cult today. They've twisted up some of their belief systems, broadened it a little bit to be more.
And even Farrakhan finds himself in hot water with the Jewish community. That's one of the reasons why he was one of the first to be banned from Twitter, because of his, his anti-Semitic perspective on a lot of things.
All of these people have this in common. This is anti-Semitism. This seems to be behind the issue here. So we tend to think that maybe Kyrie didn't do anything anti-Semitic except post a link to an anti-Semitic film. That I think we can agree on. That is true. That film, although I have not seen it because I ain't trying to pay $45 on Amazon Prime or $11.99 to rent it for a couple hours, I'm good, dog. I'll research it. I knew it came from a book. I know it quotes some Holocaust denier books, some very prevalent anti-Semitic texts from the 1920s that have been completely debunked. Right. So this brings me back to some of these free thinkers. You got to make sure that you're not getting duped by a Willie Lynch file type of thing going on here, man. That's where we talk about these critical thinking skills. You can't just be a free thinker. You can't be like Kanye, talk about I've been taught to think for myself and think any old stupid idea that comes to your mind qualifies. You need to pay attention. If you're going to think for yourself, there's a lot more responsibility that is required upon you. Otherwise, just go about your daily business, pay your taxes, do your job, come home and watch your stupid little TV at night and your little reality shows, eat your dinner, go back, wake up, do the same thing. But if you're going to start claiming that you know deep history and you need to be going to them texts, you can't be over here at the same breath talking about you don't read a book, fool. You know what I mean? That's not how it is. Now, I think Muhammad Ali wore his heart on the sleeve. He grew up in a time period where they were trying to get civil rights, and it was easy to fall into a cult. Malcolm fell into a cult. Most people who uh, who were Nation of Islam supporters were susceptible to this, were vulnerable to this, because they were the people who experienced the most racism, the most virulent forms of racism in our society. They came from the prisons when they didn't even do anything wrong, oftentimes barely anything wrong, in there for 10, 15 years. And here is this philosophy that gives you a sense of empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
But Kanye should know better than that in this
I,
situation.
I, I, I think, and not to excuse Kyrie or Kanye, however, what I do know is that when Muhammad is, or Cassius is exposed to the Nation of Islam, there's not a plethora of information at his fingertips like this
Right,
generation is. Like this
right.
generation, their difficulty is that they're oversaturated. Oh, can you hear that?
No.
Oh, okay. There are some dogs going
Oh,
off right now. But for somebody like Kyrie and Kanye, there's an oversaturation of information, so much so that this generation is now rewriting much of what they were initially taught. Let me give you an example of this. That there's so much information out here to such a degree that we're challenging constructs such as race itself.
sure.
What and one can make an argument, well, who are you to, or who is this generation to even to question? What do you mean that you don't know what race is? What do you mean that there are these new genders? What do you mean that there are these new ethnicities? What do you mean that you can't tell me that this is biologically a woman? I mean, we're having these conversations
Mm-hmm.
all across America, all across the world as to what this means and what that means. And these younger generations are not accepting the traditional. What do you mean the world is round? And they're exploring and they're finding themselves in dangerous spots because you're right. They're not equipped to critically think and avoid these potholes from these pot cracks who are feeding them nonsense. And I
Right.
agree with you. Now, again, somebody like Muhammad Ali and Malcolm might be more susceptible because of again, they're not being inundated every other day with information. But nonetheless, notice that each and you made a statement. You said Muhammad wears his heart on his sleeve. Every individual I brought up wears their heart on their sleeve. As a matter of fact, you go look at one of Kanye's albums, 808 and Heartbreak. The album is a picture of him with his heart exposed outside of his breast pocket, because he is an individual much like he's like Muhammad in that sense. Now they're not. I'm not equating them in the sense that one's a civil rights icon and the other one's a hip hop producer. However, I am equating them in the sense that I think when Muhammad was making his statements, I don't think he ever saw himself as a civil rights icon. This is something that's placed upon him many years later. The guys are what ultimately, when it's all said and done, they're just speaking what they believe to be the truth in that moment.
Oh
Little
yeah,
does
I would. In fact, I would say probably, unless I'm missing somebody, every name that's been mentioned here so far would be people who wear their hearts on their sleeves, except Farrakhan and Tyson. I would say that they don't fit that ilk. Tyson for different reasons than Farrakhan. I think Tyson has dealt with a lot of other issues, and Farrakhan, I think, is got some con manish about him. But the other, but the others, they think first. I'm sorry, they speak first sometimes, think second. Malcolm's in a whole different level because he's an intellectual. The rest of these people, their problem is that they dabble into things that aren't in their expertise. So Muhammad Ali is a boxer. So yeah, he's going to say some things that he probably doesn't quite know yet in other ways. But he relied on the people in his religion around him to instruct him. If he'd have went with Malcolm instead of with Elijah, probably would have been better off. But the other two, they wear their heart on the sleeves. They're basketball players, they're producers, and they say too many things about things they're not experts at. Kanye's big problem is that he thinks he's a genius in everything because he is good at making music. It's the classic was ad hominem, whichever logical fallacy it is, where uh, you got somebody who's good at something, and then you get them to endorse something else that they know nothing about, but you know them in this capacity, so you join them in that capacity, and that's a big issue. It's a big problem, and Kanye does not understand how to admit he's wrong. He just doubles down when he's kind of like a whiny little baby. I think there's a lot of issues there that make him different than Kyrie. I feel like uh, Kyrie is a different issue. I don't know that I have very much issue with Kyrie right now with this situation. I have some problems maybe with some of the other goofy things that he said about flat Earth and uh, not taking a COVID vaccine type
Mm-hmm.
stuff. But with this situation, I feel like he's been done wrong,
Absolutely.
really badly, because he specifically said he was not anti-Semitic, and these people didn't like their response. Now, I think there's a difference to me when you post something versus liked something. And Kyrie just posted something. It could have very well, I don't know why. I know I post things because I want to go back and check on it later. And it's there on my record so that I know I'm going to go back and watch this movie later. So now I can't even, like, all you people who are complaining about, taking books out of the libraries and whatnot. So this to me is a similar type of situation here. Um, this man's not even allowed to watch a documentary now. Like, you're getting mad at him because he said I could post what I want. Yeah, you can post what you want. That don't matter. Like, I post something maybe as because I'm gonna go back and watch it later. So
Mm-hmm.
to me, I just feel like that doesn't represent it, that he embraced it or that he
No,
endorsed.
he's in essence becoming. Look, he's the perfect individual to prey upon for doing what Kyrie would normally do. I think it caught him in this environment,
Yeah,
which is the fallout of Kanye's anti-Semitism environment, and then they caught him doing what Kyrie normally does. Kyrie was doing what Kyrie does, and that's
right,
exploring areas, and he doesn't provide context.
right,
He doesn't say, I endorse this, or I like this part, or I like that part. And then we run this issue of like, well, in hour 1 minute 12, it says this. Okay, well, I enjoyed the documentary from minute 5 to minute 10. Like, I mean, like you can't accept one thing without loving all of it.
mm-hmm.
And I think that's unfortunate at times that, you know, um, some of the wisest things I ever heard came from a man that might have been drunk. Because it came from a drunk, it ceased to be wise.
Yeah,
Like, and don't get me wrong, like Kyrie admitted, I'm not endorsing the documentary. I haven't even seen it, but Kyrie admits after he watched it and alluding that it came from a book that there were some things that were problematic, and I admit that there were some things in there that were said to be untrue, and I admit that. But then they just kept badgering them. No, we need you to say it like this.
yeah.
We need you. And again, man, it's this attitude in this country. Like, we need you to feel sorry the way we want you to feel sorry.
Mm,
You're not contrite enough.
yeah,
You haven't apologized the way we want you to. And then once you bow down, then we'll give you room for redemption. And I've seen this story take place in many areas of our society. And then coincidentally, I pointed out 5 young African American men who, after they have apologized correctly, then we give you the room for your redemption song. I brought up, and I'm not equating the men and their work. We find out that, we know for a fact that Muhammad, um, you know, bit the bullet, taking a stand and it resulting in, you know, his career being what it was. Mike was just out there. Mike Tyson was out there. But there's a redemptive song for him
Yeah,
to some degree.
Took a while.
I mean, it took a while. And I think with Kanye, it's going to be the same thing. They just need Kanye to do what they want him to do. And who's they? I don't know. But my point is that like our society at large,
You know, but I don't know that. That's interesting because I don't know that Tyson actually did do what everybody wanted him to do. It doesn't always work out that way. I think like in Muhammad Ali's situation, I feel like he was on the right path. When he lost his career, he lost it for right reasons. He's protesting a war that was unjust in our society today. That a lot of evidence shows was. There are still people who disagree with that.
After the fact. At the time, he was the most hated man on earth.
Yeah, for sure.
The most hated American on earth.
No, he was hated for standing up for something that turns out to be right.
That's hindsight, though, dude. That's hindsight. In the moment, they were hated on. Right now, Kanye's being hated on.
Yeah, that's true.
Hindsight could be, you know, Kanye's a revolutionary. That's hindsight. With Mike, he went to prison. And it wasn't until we saw him fat and bloated in a movie where he's singing, you know,
Phil Collins.
a Phil Collins song, is America like, oh my God, what happened to Mike? He has a big belly. He's a face tattoo. He's in Bangkok doing God knows what. You know, I mean, like America looked at Mike and we're like, oh my goodness, what happened to Iron Mike? And it was when I hate to say it, man, like it almost seemed like, oh, he's no longer the angry black man we were afraid of. He's just now more subdued, broken. You know, the dude probably has like $100,000 to his name. Oh, Mike. He's not the scary guy we thought he was. And now he's this lovable character. It's a weird world, man. I look at it and I see so many individuals broken. And it's only after they're broken, okay, now good, come back. Well, we're willing to fix your story for you. I don't know. I get that feeling. Obviously could be wrong.
I mean, it's interesting to think about. Maybe. Go ahead.
Good. Well, I was just going to say that in the moment, though, these individuals. I mean, Mike goes to prison.
Right.
He's now He's not. He's a. He comes back, and he is. I don't want to. He's a. We're paying attention to him, but I guess for us, he's not a train wreck.
Yeah, maybe it's because his train did wreck, and he put the pieces back together, and maybe there were a lot of reasons for that, but maybe it wasn't because of the social hate. Maybe it was because of the growing up. There's a lot of differences there, the complexities to the Mike situation compared to the Muhammad Ali situation and then the Kanye situation. Kanye's problem is that he's going back and lying in bed with beliefs that have been deeply historically refuted over time, man. Muhammad Ali was going to bat for things that people didn't agree with in the moment right there. And they were still hopped up on Cold War babyism. He saw something in the future that was coming. He saw the path that we were headed towards. Some people have that vision to see where society is wrong and call them out.
Yeah,
Kanye's doing something different. Kanye is going back and pulling extremely hateful white supremacist ideas that he's toying around with just because he's gotten tired or he's so contrarian. He just can't admit he's wrong. He likes to be so differently, and it's just so nauseating to see.
We can go back and we can pull the tapes, the archives. There's so many pundits in the early years of media, television, that is, that would make similar arguments against Muhammad Ali and his black supremacist views. And like this anti-war view he had, he got that from the nation.
Yeah,
And,
that part of
and the
it was
nation,
right, but he still had other problems that I would
but
chalk up to the cult mentality,
but
though.
that problem was, I'm sorry, that point was right only in the hindsight, in the moment. His black nationalist, black supremacist views that he adopted from the Nation of Islam were always perceived in that moment as problematic. The same way that we're looking at Kanye right now as being, in this moment, he's problematic. With that, the history is untold on Kanye. We don't know. However, now at that time, and I agree with you, in this moment, yeah, Kanye, yo, you're tripping, dog. But we can look back at the archives, and there were many historians, many pundits who would look at what the courageous stand that we now have the privilege of looking back on and saying, no, Muhammad Ali was right. But in that moment, everybody was condemning him the same way that we're all condemning Kanye right now. Now, again,
That's
I'm not
true, but
equating the two.
there's different way out. There's different ways to condemn, though, right? I mean, to say I'm not going to war with a yellow man, who ain't never done nothing to me, for a white man, that was a society was condemning him because there was a strong movement of more and more people coming to the realization that society was wrong. Kanye's situation is flipped, yo. Our society, the people like who built up to that mentality that Muhammad Ali was embracing, have also now over these decades disproven all of this Jewish conspiracy stuff that this man is going back to. He's looking back to things. He's embracing reactionary ideas of white supremacists, whereas Muhammad Ali was embracing revolutionary ideas. Yeah, there was a lot of problems with the Nation of Islam, no doubt, and the cultish ideas helped kind of him gravitate it. But there's a lot of good things that they were saying at that time too.
I don't disagree with the narrative of Muhammad Ali being a revolutionary.
Yeah.
I think that perspective and that narrative has the privilege of hindsight. In the moment, dude, we could look at the nation and many organizations. Now, what's interesting about boxing is that that's an organization of the individual. They're not held to, they can operate as individuals. Boxers can. Nobody owns them per se, even though Muhammad, we can make an argument, well, he was controlled by this group and controlled by that group, as Cassius Clay was. The NBA as an organization, they are controlling the narrative as to what players can and cannot say, and they want to make sure that Kyrie understands what he needs to do in order to be a part of this organization. He doesn't have the privilege of operating as an individual. Now, Muhammad Ali, man, he's making, they don't say, hey, you need to disavow the Nation of Islam. As they are telling Kyrie, you need to disavow, you need to disassociate yourself from that tweet, you need to disassociate yourself from that documentary. They can't tell, and even if they did, Muhammad Ali would say, all right, bye. I'm not going to war.
But if he came to realize that supporting whatever that was wrong, then I would say Muhammad Ali would be wrong in that instance.
He is wrong.
You don't always just reject it. So, like, for example, I looked at those requirements that Kanye or that Kyrie has to do. I hope he does them. And I hope he does them all. And afterwards he comes back and he says, yeah, I learned a lot of stuff, but I'd like to point out that I never even said anything anti-Semitic. I apologize for tweeting a movie that I didn't realize was deeply anti-Semitic. That's all. Cause I told y'all I'm not anti-Semitic. And
you've been saying that already.
Yeah. And so like, all of that stuff that he's supposed to do, I guess none of it's bad. It'll help you learn. Anytime you get to go take a history lesson, I'm all for it. But who are you going to be giving it to? What are they going to be saying? Are you really going to be facing and learning from scholars, or what's the point of all this? Is the key.
It's performative. That's what it is. Do what I tell you to do when I tell you to do it.
Right.
You can't tell a boxer that. You can't tell Floyd Mayweather. Here's the thing about Floyd Mayweather. He says a bunch of crazy stuff too, but you can't take his money because it's his money. And then that's the power and privilege of money, especially in America, as being free speech. Donald Trump, and that's what I knew. Free speech was controlled by money, or that money was free speech, because Donald Trump could say a multitude of things, and then how are you going to hurt him? How are you going to take away his money? He's to a degree self-made. And the thing with Kyrie is like, oh, we can hurt you because you make your money through us, this organization, the NBA.
You on that contract, boy.
And we'll take your money away in a heartbeat. That's how I knew. And that's the thing about Trump, is that he doesn't need endorsements. You look at a lot of politicians, the reason why, like, the reason for political correctness from the sake of politicking is because I'm worried about losing my endorsements, or I'm worried about losing my backers. That's why Trump could say whatever he wanted, because his backers was him. He funded his own campaigns for the most part. And, going back to Muhammad again, again, I think in that moment, man, Muhammad was parroting the Nation of Islam, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, until he passed, and then to some degree parroting Louis Farrakhan, who is incredibly influential. Man, I go back and I read some of what, and even Muhammad Ali was embarrassed at some of the stuff he said to Brother Malcolm.
Man, if you ain't embarrassed by the time you're 50 or 60 years old of things that you've said 20, 25 years ago, I would say you didn't really live life, man. I'm sorry. I feel sorry for you. I feel like one of the keys to life and learning is lived experience. You have to be able to be and do and experience in order to achieve and level up and rise. And one of the biggest problems, or critiques, I should say, that I have with this outrage culture that we have in our society is that it can maybe psychologically get people to hold their tongue so much that they end up living a life of regret, where they go back 20, 30 years reflecting, and they're just like, I was a robot. I didn't do anything. So I don't like the idea of trying to silence people, but I do think, on the other hand, it's a fine line. Like I said, man, because you can't just go out willy-nilly and embrace any stupid idea. We got to put some responsibility on what you're spending your time paying attention to. Like you said something about them versus now, like what they had. Back then, they had less access to. Now, the problem is trying to choose what knowledge to decipher. We have to. Back then, the skill was trying to figure out where to search for the material. Now, or so that you could get a hold of it. Now, it's like, what do I need to sift through to pay close attention?
It's too easy.
Yeah,
it's too easy. And we could compare it to just like eating food. Fast food is too easy to consume.
Right.
So we end up consuming what's convenient.
Yeah, it's all over.
And then in the long run, it's destructive.
Messes you up. Exactly.
Right.
It's designed like that, right? The system is designed like that, you could argue. And one could argue that once technology hit a particular point, and we found out what David Courtwright coined this term, limbic capitalism. When capitalism began to figure out the limbic portions of the brain and connecting that with technology, and getting people to realize that the stimulating the limbic brain when you get a little thumbs up or a click or a tweet and you get these senses of these little dopamine threads, and you end up falling into these traps, man, where you get into all of these things and these different belief systems that just reinforce what you like to hear. Because we've known that about people's personal interactions for a long time. You oftentimes mold yourself to the individual that you're speaking with, and you begin to follow quite easily. The vast majority of people do. And so they've been able to do this by making technology Facebook, like your technology is your interaction, and they've been able to get you to clickbait, I guess they call it nowadays, to just sort of get you down these roads, and you start wasting your energy thinking about things with such veracity that you lose sight of deciphering, skills, critical thinking skills, right? And I think that's always been my problem with Kanye and Kyrie, is that they're too quick to believe something because it's against the grain, and they love to be different.
And I think they both have a thirst for knowledge. I think the problem, though, is as you acknowledged, is that they're consuming these carefully crafted pieces of information, these documentaries that that can be a bit misleading, packed with information that seems at face value, it's intriguing. Oh, real? Oh, wow. Oh, that does equal this. And there's not a lot of depth, because depth comes with time. Depth comes with, again, digging in the crates. Like, it's even like when we look at music, we're like, oh, I enjoy that beat. And then they're like, well, that's a Meg Thee Stallion beat. Oh, you didn't know that that's actually a Biggie beat? Oh, you didn't know that that's not even a Biggie beat? That's an Isley Brother beat? And then when you dig further into the crate, you realize that whatever you're consuming is just it's a replication or a mirror of this and that, and their quality becomes very minuscule. That when you dig deeper, you think critically, and we're actually going back to reading books, not consuming just this link and that click and this and that. That we may have higher levels of thinking.
Yeah.
So that we don't make these mistakes.
But it takes effort, and that's the biggest problem. It takes a lot of effort. And one of the things is, man, it trips me out over here with Kanye. I'm going on a speaking silence, a sex silence, and whatever he said, hiatus. But you notice he didn't say alcohol, he didn't say weed, he didn't say all these other things that his drug exceptionalism mind thinks are okay, that are probably exacerbating many of the problems that he has, because the way we come in contact with drugs or substances, how we begin to use them, the context in which we use them, and our understandings of them have tremendous influences on the way they react on us. And oftentimes you can think of something being extremely profound if you got your cannabinoids binding to THC, and you think you got these great creative ideas, but if you don't stop and reflect on them in other states of mind and go back and do the work and pay attention to it, you don't zero them in, narrow them down to what's good and what's maybe problematic. And I think that's a key element about all these people who we've been describing. This is why I always tell my students, man, when I teach this ancient civilization class, I'm like, I'm just giving you the basics here. If you ask me a question, I'm probably not going to be able to answer it for you, because I'm not going to speak on something I don't know. I'm not going to pretend like I'm over here. No, I can say something and make you think I'm the smartest man in the world. I got it all down. I can just come up with it real quickly, and then you may think that's true based off the way I said it, or I can be real to the game, admit that I don't know something, because it takes tremendous amount of energy, and I haven't had that much time in my life to sit down and learn, ancient Greek and be able to decipher this text of hieroglyphs. There be some people who have, and I can rely on them, and I can know a little bit of their background and see where they're coming from, and do some research about where they were trained and what school of thought they went through, how much work they put in. But the problem is you don't get that deep thought. You're too busy playing basketball. You're too busy making beats. You're too busy doing this. And that takes a lot of time to be as great as Kyrie is in basketball. That takes a lot of time in boxing to be as great as Muhammad Ali was. And that's why I like that Steve Kerr reminds me of that. He's a great basketball coach. And when they ask him questions that he don't know, he's like, yo, I'm a basketball coach. I don't have time to think about this. My pops may have known. Some other cats may have known. But I'm going to be careful in what I say. Because it can get you in trouble.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Malcolm would say, to look at others and be compassionate about what they know and what they don't know, because don't forget, there was a time at which you did not know what you currently know.
Right.
And we need the time to reflect on what we're learning. And we don't have, unfortunately, I feel like we don't give people the grace.
We don't.
And time to develop and grow and let people marinate. And oddly enough, man, the shirt that I'm wearing, I don't know if you can even see it.
Yeah.
But at the bottom, it says,
don't make assumptions.
Because, man, who I was when I was 20 is not going to be who I am when I'm 30. The attitudes or the views that I have when I'm 15, they change. And I want to believe, I want to sincerely believe that people have the capacity to change. And
you gotta be able to make mistakes. That's the key, man.
But we don't do that in this society. This society wants to go ahead and in this man's career.
Yeah, we're back on the same thing where, like, if you ain't having any regrets, man, you didn't live. This guy Boris Pasternak, who's one of my favorite Russian authors, said at one point, I don't like people who've never fallen or stumbled, because their virtue is lifeless and it isn't much value, because life hasn't revealed its beauty to them. I think it's a great point, because when you go through life and you don't stumble, and if we get to the point where we don't even allow people to take risks to stumble, then it's going to be like machines, man. So it's like we gotta let people stumble. We can't crucify them, but on the other hand, you got to not double down on stupid shit when you end up saying it. That's another key. Like, this has got to be an engagement. This is why I think this is where we separate Kyrie from Kanye. Kyrie has humility. I think Kyrie is genuinely a religious man. I think he's genuinely a caring person who likes and supports all groups of people. I think Kanye is just so wrapped up with his thinking he's genius and loving himself and daring anyone to, if someone calls him out, he gets so angry. You see it in the Piers Morgan one. When you watch that, it's so clear. Like, he clearly say, yeah, this wasn't good, but nope, I'm going to just go right at it again, man. Like, I'm mad.
I saw parts of that.
I don't want to admit I'm wrong, so I'm going to just double down. It's like, come on,
well,
man.
Then,
petty.
If that's the case, then I think, the quote you just gave us, that would be the quote we should probably end the conversation with.
We're already
at it, man.
Oof, that went by quick. I felt like we just got in.
I feel like we were just about to get into another one.
Yeah, for real.
So a whole nother. But the 5 minutes is up, and then with that being said, let's look back at that quote, and we just leave it at that. That sometimes we need those stumbles, we need those hurdles, and it leads me back to a quote, that I get from The Dark Knight, a Batman quote, and the quote is, the reason why we fall so that we learn to get how to pick ourselves back up.
Yeah, I love that one. How do we fall, Bruce?
Yes. Yeah. So
that's dope.
But outside of that, man, I think we just we'll call it.
Cool.
And we'll just let it marinate and exist as it is.
Right on. Until next week.
Man. Yes, sir. Get that